Okay, I'm explaining the human gas exchange from for the syllabus of grade 9. All right. So in this chapter, you need to know what are the features, what features should be present in the exchange surfaces, and what are the percentage of gases in the atmosphere, and the exhaled air and inhaled air percentage, okay, percentages, how they are different. And then you should be able to identify the lungs, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, bronchus, and alveoli in the diagram. And then which blood vessels actually are associated with the villi, and what are the properties of the villi, what is the function of the villi. And you should be able to explain what is breathing, how inhalation occur, how exhalation occur. And you should be able to identify the ribs, the internal structure, internal and external intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm, or what are the roles of this each part in the breathing system, right? And there is some investigations and explanation as well about how the physical activity affect the rate of breathing and the deep breath, plus what is the role of goblet cells, the ciliated cells, and how it is protecting the gas exchange system. Okay, from the pathogens and the particles. This is the overview of this chapter. So the breathing system is actually in the animal, or in the vertebrate. In the animal, you take in the air, animal, or you can say the vertebrate, you take in the air, that is oxygen, that's known as inspiration or exhalation. Okay, and then giving out of the air is exhalation, that's expiration or exhalation or expiration, yes. Okay, and we give out carbon dioxide, we take in oxygen. This is the breathing mechanism. And in the breathing mechanism, we have a system known as respiratory system. And the pathway of the this is actually the pathway of the air through the respiratory system, that which the sequence of the respiratory system, how the air actually flows, okay, and how they are reached to the alveoli. Now, first go through the sequence. First, it goes to the nasal passage, then to pharynx. We have discussed the pharynx in human nutrition. Larynx is actually the voice box present on above of the trachea, and the trachea is a windpipe. The windpipe splits into two parts, goes into the each lungs, the bronchi, and then bronchi divides into smaller uh, uh, branches, that is known as bronchioles. And at the end of the bronchioles, you may find some clusters, that is known as a sac of clusters, that is known as alveoli. This is the labeling of the respiratory system. The nasal cavity, this is the pharynx. Okay, and under the pharynx you have larynx. Larynx is open into a trachea. The trachea splitting into two bony structure, that is known as bronchi. The bronchi is entering the lungs, and these bronchi are now dividing and redividing and becoming smaller and smaller into diameter. This is known as bronchioles. At the end of the bronchioles, you may find some sac-like structures, that is known as alveoli. This is the area where the gas is exchanged, right? And you may find the lungs. Lungs are actually the main organ where the gases are exchanged, and it is in the chest cavity. And under these lungs, you may find a flap, a big muscular structure, that is known as diaphragm. All right. Okay. Now, what are the advantages of breathing through nose? Benefits of nasal hair. You have nasal hair in your nose, and what are the advantages of it? So, if you breathe in through nose and breathe out through mouth, so how it is beneficial to us? Number one, as you have a nasal hair, and nasal hair actually have mucus in your. You also have a mucus in your nasal lining. So, the dust or the foreign particles are being trapped by these hairs, which are you know they are submerged into the mucus. So that mucus is a sticky substance which traps this dust and foreign particles. Okay, and this nasal hair actually sweeps and remove it out. Okay, either you sneeze it out. Okay, or yeah, you usually sneeze it out. And another benefit of nasal hair that it keeps the or yes, nasal hair keeps the air warm and moist. If the air is warm according to my body temperature and is moist, the diffusion rate of the gases into the lungs would be much quicker and much faster because the alveoli is actually moist. Alveoli has a moist layer. So it will be easier for the gases to exchange into the moisture layer. If the air is dry, it will take a lot of time. And if air is warmer air is it has more kinetic energy, so the molecules can move easily, it can diffuse easily. Plus, my body temperature is 37, and atmosphere is at least at room temperature, like between 21 to 25 or 26. So it is lower than my body temperature. So if the air comes up to the level of my body temperature 37, so the diffusion rate of the absorbing of the gas would be much faster. And the third part is, as your nose is a sensory organ, it has a sense of smell. You can detect the harmful chemicals in form of smell or aroma, and you can protect, ठीक or you can cover your nose. So that's how you can protect from yourself from the harmful chemicals, right? So these are the three major advantages of the nasal hair. Then coming to the trachea, your trachea actually is supposed to be open all the time because the gases are being exchanged. You're inhaling or exhaling. So if your trachea will collapse, or if it if it collapses means that if this lumen, there's no more lumen present. What is lumen? Lumen is actually a hollow tube. Okay. If there's no more lumen present, the gases cannot move and move out. There would be no oxygen. There would be no respiration. The cell can die. So there should be a 24/7 gas supply. Okay. How that air supply would be possible 24/7 if the pathway or the airway should be open all the time. And how it is open all the time, especially the trachea, that they are supported by some soft bones known as cartilage in a C-shaped structure, C-shaped ring. Not the whole, if you notice, it is uh, only the semicircle of the trachea tube is being supported by this cartilage. Okay, not the whole circle, only the half of the circle. That's why it says C-shaped rings. Okay, okay. So number one point, it is supported by the C-shaped ring cartilage to ensure that they are always kept open. Number two, the whole trachea actually has a lining of ciliated and goblet cells. Ciliated cells are the one, these are the ciliated cells. They are the one who have cilia above them. Cilia are the hair-like structure. They sweep, they move to and fro. Okay, and between these cilia cells, you have a goblet-shaped structure that is known as goblet cells, and they releases a chemical which is known as mucus. Mucus is a sticky substance. So what happens when you breathe in? If there are any dust particles or any pathogen which escape from the nasal hair and it goes into the trachea, they keep on sticking those substances and those pathogens, and this cilia will actually push that mucus out of your mouth or out of the trachea, out into the mouth or out of the trachea, right? So the whole this whole trachea is lined with this ciliated cells and the goblet cells. Okay, okay, and this trachea is leading towards the bronchi. If you see, if the question comes, what is the property or what are the characteristic of the ciliated cells and the goblet cells, we have discussed, right? And you can see this picture is actually, it is the real picture of the goblet cell and the ciliated cells, right? And this one is just a diagram. um, you should be able to identify. Okay, if you see in between the ciliated cells there are some goblet cells present. That's why the hair of this ciliated cells or the cilia of the ciliated cells are embedded in the mucus. They are pushing the mucus to and fro. so they can push it out if anything is being stuck. ठीक है जी? Okay. Now, that trachea now is splitting into bronchi. ठीक है? So that bronchi will go into the lungs respectively, and they will divide repeatedly and makes the smaller tubes, a smaller diameter, the smaller tubes with a smaller diameter, that is known as bronchioles. Now, the trachea has a C-shaped cartilage, bronchi has a C-shaped cartilage and the ciliated cells and the mucus cell, but the bronchioles do not have the C-shaped cartilage. They do not have, right? There is no support of the C-shaped cartilage there. Yet they have the ciliated cells. They do have. So when the air reaches to the alveoli, the air is at its most cleanest part. Okay? The cleanest air should reach to the alveoli. That's why there are different areas where the air is being cleaned. First in the nose, then in the trachea, then in the bronchi, okay, and then it reaches bronchioles as well, and then it reaches to the alveoli. Okay, and which organ helps in the gases exchange? That's the lungs. There are a pair of lungs which is present in your chest cavity, right? And these lungs are actually how do they helps in breathing? They expand and they deflate. They expand and they deflate. When you breathe in, they expand like a balloon, and when you want to when the air is taken out, okay, that lungs will then inflate, right? Okay. And then these lungs are actually enveloped in two membrane that is known as pleural membrane. It keeps the lungs moist. It keeps the lung it prevents the lung from being damaged because of the friction, as there is a heart present in the middle of the lung, and the heart pumps, and due to the pumping the heart moves, right? And that movement, if there is no barrier between the lung and the heart, there can be a problem of friction and the muscles can be damaged. That's why the liver and that's why the lungs and the heart both are enclosed in their respective membrane, and the membrane of the lung is known as pleural membrane, right? And that pleural membrane or do contain some fluid which keeps the lung moist, right? This is the function of the lungs. Okay, then this is actually the cage-like structure, bony cage known as ribs, in which the lungs and the heart is enclosed. They're present in the chest cavity, right? So there are actually 12 bones in pair, right? Uh, and these bones have some muscles present between them, which is known as intercostal muscles. These intercostal muscles are antagonistic muscles. Antagonistic means one muscle work. There are two muscles. They are working at the same time, but in the opposite direction. One contracts, other relaxes. ठीक है जी? Okay. These muscles actually are very much helpful during breathing. Okay. Then looking at the position of the internal and external intercostal muscles. So those you may find the outer area is known as external intercostal muscles. Okay, and which you may find behind the external intercostal muscles are known as internal intercostal muscles. So you have external intercostal muscles and you have internal intercostal muscles. Make sure you have written the correct spelling. It's not COASTL wala coastal, it's COSTL wala coastal. All right. Okay, Ji. So these are the ribs. The ribs have some muscles present in between them, that is known as intercostal muscles. And the outer muscles are known as external, and the inner one is known as internal. Okay. And underneath these lungs, you have a diaphragm. Okay. Now, as you can see, there's the bronchi. The singular is bronchus and the plural is bronchi. They have, after repeatedly dividing, they turn into bronchioles, and at the end of the bronchioles, you may find some cluster sac-like structure that is known as alveoli. This is actually the gas surface area, gas exchange surface, where the gases are exchanged. And you can see they are well supplied with blood capillaries. ठीक है जी? Now, what happens? What are the properties of alveoli? If you see the alveoli, or this alveolus is singular, plural is alveoli. When I'm saying it is well supplied with blood capillaries, where these blood capillaries are coming from? They're actually coming from the heart. Okay. The heart is the organ which pumps the blood, right? It's carrying it, the all the deoxygenated blood comes through the vein into the heart, and then it becomes oxygenated, and then oxygenated blood is again pumped back to the body through arteries. Isn't it so? Is what happens, right, in the circulatory system. All the deoxygenated blood through veins come to the heart. Okay, when the heart pumps, this deoxygenated blood turns into oxygenated blood. What when I'm saying deoxygenated blood, it means it has a carbon dioxide in higher amount. When I'm saying oxygenated blood, it means it has oxygen in a higher amount, right? So deoxygenated blood comes into the heart, then the heart pumps. What happens here? That the deoxygenated blood converts into oxygenated blood. The carbon dioxide is removed and the oxygen is being added. Okay? Then the heart again pumps the blood, and through arteries, this oxygenated blood is supplied all over the cells. But the thing is, heart is only pumping the blood. Where is this exchanging of the gases occurring? Before pumping back the blood back to the heart, that deoxygenated blood, that blood which is filled with carbon dioxide, will be sent to the lungs. That's why lungs and heart is present at the same area. That's why they are closer. Okay, that deoxygenated blood will go to the lungs. Through which vessel? You need to remember the vessel. The name of the vessel is known as pulmonary arteries. Okay, it is known as, and you can see the arrow, when the blood is entering is the pulmonary artery. This vessel contains blood which has carbon dioxide in it. Okay, we need to remove the carbon dioxide. So what happens here? Okay, this carbon dioxide, if you see, this is much better diagram. Okay, the blood is coming from the pulmonary artery. The arrow should be pointing inward. Okay, and you know the red blood cell actually carries the oxygen. They also carries the carbon dioxide. They are the one who's bringing the carbon dioxide. So they when they bring it to the surface of the alveoli, and through diffusion, the carbon dioxide will leave the red blood cells, and as soon as they leave the the carbon dioxide leave the red blood cells, as soon as the carbon dioxide is removed, the another gas which is oxygen, which they will bind with the red blood cells immediately. Now your deoxygenated blood is being converted into oxygenated blood. Now the oxygen is in higher ratio or higher percentage. Carbon dioxide has been removed. Oxygen is back with the red blood cell, right? And when it is done, this blood will go out of the go out of the alveoli, and the vessel which takes that blood back to the heart away from the alveoli is known as pulmonary vein. Who's bringing the blood to the alveoli? Pulmonary artery. Who's taking the blood away from the alveoli? Pulmonary vein. That pulmonary vein will take the blood to the heart, and now the heart will pump and pushes that oxygenated blood, the good blood, the blood which is rich with oxygen, to the cells. So heart is not actually cleaning the blood, or you can say it's not making the blood oxygenated. The lungs are the one which is making the blood oxygenated. Okay, so this is what happens, and this exchange of this carbon dioxide and oxygen is occurred by the process of diffusion. So you need to let's go through the structure and characteristic of the alveoli. Number one, alveolar walls are very thin, again thin, similar to villi. They were thin. While the distance is reduced, it's only one cell thick, so the diffusion rate can be increased. That's why they are thinner. That's why they are made up of only one cell. One cell means there's only one layer of the cells present. Okay, they should be thin. They should be moist. If you see here, there's a layer of a moisture here. Okay, if you see, if you follow this red dot, there's a layer of a moisture here. That moisture is keeping the alveoli first moist, okay, and allowing the gases to be absorbed quickly. So the alveoli are moist, they are thin, and they are well supplied with the blood capillaries. Why? To increase the rate of diffusion. Next point, they are elastic in nature. You know how the balloon works? When you keep on blowing it, it expands. Okay? And when you stop blowing, and when you क्या कहते हैं उसको, when you uh, remove the pressure from the nozzle of the balloon, that gas which is inside the balloon will rushes out and it goes back to its original shape, right? So this expands and this inflating, expands and deflating, expands, deflating, just like a balloon. So it makes it elastic. Okay, so it should be elastic. Why it should be elastic? So the lungs are enabled to expand and contract easily during breathing. That's why they should be elastic. Next part, the gases exchange actually occur here in the walls of the alveoli. And they should be numerous amount again. Numerous amount means they are increasing the surface area to volume ratio. Okay, for the gases exchange. More the alveoli, higher will be the gases exchanged. Okay, more oxygen will go in. Okay. Next, what happens that this that moisture lining when you breathing in, okay, when you breathing out, this moisture lining also are released along with the carbon dioxide in form of water vapors. That's why when you exhale, your air feel warm, right? And it's bit moist because some of the moisture also release out through the alveoli along with the carbon dioxide. Hmm? Okay, so this is all about the villi, okay? And the heat is also removed. That's why when you're hyperventilating, you're also releasing the heat. Your body cools down. So these are the structures of the alveoli. What are the structure? Let's summarize it. Should be thin, should be moist, should be well supplied. Why? To increase the rate of diffusion. Should be elastic so it can expand and contract during breathing. It should be in numerous amount so it can increase the surface area to volume ratio for the gases exchange. Okay, and which vessels are present? Which vessels bringing blood to the alveoli? Pulmonary artery. Okay, and who's taking blood away from the lungs and back to the heart? That is pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein is oxygen rich blood, and pulmonary artery is the carbon dioxide rich blood. It is, or you can say, it's a oxygen poor blood. There's less amount of oxygen in the pulmonary artery. Okay, ji. So here comes a question that what is the comparison between villi and the alveoli? On the basis of the definition, villi are finger-like projections present in the small intestine. Alveoli are the sac-like structure. Okay, they are present in the lungs. Means the location, villi are present in the ileum, that is small intestine, villi are present in the lungs. Function, alveoli absorbs the nutrients and villi absorbs the nutrients and alveoli exchanges the gases, right? And the shape, villi are finger-like shape and alveoli are sac-like shape. Okay, okay. This is a comparison, and now these are some definitions or the functions of those respiratory system parts. Okay, okay ji. Now coming to the breathing mechanism, how the breathing occurs. There are two steps: breathing in, breathing inspiration and exhalation. What happens in the inhalation? Oxygen goes in. What happens in the exhalation? Carbon dioxide goes out. And there are two structures that helps in the breathing, that is known as diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. All right, so they helps to move your chest. They helps to actually create the volume and pressure inside your chest cavity so the air can rush in or rushes out. Okay, so let's discuss inhalation. Inhalation, what you need to what are the important key points? When we breathe in, the external intercostal muscles contract and the internal intercostal muscles relaxes. What happens as a result? Your rib cage move upward and outward, right? And what happens inside? Actually, the volume, when the volume increases, the pressure decreases, which allows the atmospheric air to rushes in your lungs. Okay? And your diaphragm contracts and flattens. Your diaphragm is actually in a dome shape, right? Dome shape होता है when it is relaxed condition, but when it is contracted, it flattens. which is helps in increasing our thoracic chest or the chest cavity to increase. ठीक है? Okay जी. And then what happens? The air rushes into the lungs. ठीक है? This is a diagram of the inhalation. The chest cavity should increase. What happens in the expiration? Whatever was occurring in inhalation, all is opposite of it. How? External intercostal will now relax and the internal intercostal muscles will contract. Diaphragm will relaxes and become dome shape again, and or come back to original dome shape. Okay, the chest cavity will now move downward and inward, means there is now lesser volume but the higher pressure, and this higher pressure in the lungs allows the air to pushes outward, right? Okay ji. And then the air is forced out, so this air moving of the air in and out is also known as ventilation. How can you remember? This is a diagram of the expiration, exhalation. You can see the chest cavity is now being reduced. The volume of the chest cavity is reduced now. Okay. Okay. And how can you remember it? There is a mnemonic that's known as RICE. R for relax, I for internal intercostal muscles, C for contract, and E for external intercostal muscles. And for the exhale, you can remember as ERIC. Okay, Ji? Okay, now composition of the air we breathe in. First of all, you know that 100% of the air, how it is split. It is split into nitrogen, that is 79%, oxygen, that is 21%, carbon dioxide is 0.04%, and there's some amount of water vapor as well. So this is the inhale. What air you have inhaled has the exact same percentage which the air has. Now, but when you're breathing in, that's where the changes come. When you're breathing out, that's where you can see the changes. Oxygen which you have inhaled had 21%. When you exhale out, it has 17%. It means the 4% there's a change of the 4%. Okay. So what happened to the 4%? That oxygen is being absorbed into the blood. Okay. Carbon dioxide, when you were inhaling, it was 0.04, but when you were exhaling, it was 4%. So that 3% which is present between them, what happened? The change of the 3%. What happened here means that the carbon dioxide in the blood is now rushes out, okay, in form of exhalation. Okay. Nitrogen is not absorbed in this air form, it is absorbed in different way, so the nitrogen remained 79. There's no change in the nitrogen. Yes, but when you are exhaling, as I told you, some of the moisture is removed through the gas exchange as well. So when you're exhaling, the exhale would have the higher amount of water vapors. This is the difference or composition of the air. ठीक है जी. And this is the waves. If we want you to count how many breath the person has taken, we will count the waves. Okay, if the waves are normal, okay, you can see there are smaller waves, it means the person is at rest condition. But if the waves are longer, okay, and the distance between the two waves is reduced, it means that the person is hyperventilating or the person is exercising. Okay, all right. Now, breathing rate and the exercise, when you are exercising, your metabolism increases, your blood flow increases, your cell needs more oxygen for the respiration, so it can contract. And where does this oxygen coming from? From the blood. It means that the heart has to work more, so your heart rate will increase. And where this oxygen is coming from? Is coming from the lungs actually, right? So your lungs has to perform faster. You will be breathing much faster, so that is your breathing rate will increase during the exercise. ठीक है जी. Okay, this is one of the graph. You can study it. So at the rest condition, it was the constant, ठीक है, but once you started to exercise, started to elevate, at a certain point when you stop the exercise, you can see the graph is declining. You are in a recovery mode. Okay ji. Your heart rate is increasing, your breathing rate is increasing. Okay ji. So